This talk I've given the title of Mindfulness of the Breathing Body, Stepping into Our Box of Delights. But before we start, well, actually, the start is, for me, it just feels totally strange to be talking about mindfulness of the body without checking that on some level we're all currently in our bodies. So if you'd like to just make yourselves comfy, doesn't have to be your meditation posture, just check actually that where you were sitting or how you're sitting right now allows a sense of relaxation, of opening, allows a sense of connection with the earth. What are the direct sensations of that connection with the earth? And that this posture you're currently sitting in allows connection with the sky, the vastness, the vast blue open sky. Maybe take your hand to your belly and just notice whether there's any tension or holding there. Maybe take your hands to your jaw and encourage some sense of relaxation if that's possible. Or notice if it was already relaxed. Bringing clear, non-judgmental, kindly awareness of the present moment, of what's going on in the body. So what is body? Siddhi gave us a brief introduction to the 4 Satipatthanas yesterday. And in the Satipatthanas Sutta itself, the Buddha gives a clear and detailed instruction regarding this first foundation of mindfulness. It's clear from the level of detail the Buddha gives that it's no mere accident that this is the first one. Mindfulness of Rupa, mindfulness of form, mindfulness of the body plays such a vital role in mindfulness as a whole. It's first in the sutta, but it's not something to be done before doing the real thing later with dharmas. It is the real thing. So in the sutta, it's very interesting. The Buddha gives us a number of different options, different ways in to contemplating and meditating on the body. Some of those we're going to continue to explore during the rest of this day. And some of the different ways do follow on from each other. There is a depth to the practice, but each of them can suit different bodies at different times as well. So it's worth playing with them all and just seeing what suits you. So the Buddha gives clear instruction on what we now know as the mindfulness of breathing. He also gives clear instruction on the mindfulness of postures, how we're holding our bodies at all times, sitting, lying down, walking around. He also gives instruction on mindfulness of activities, all the different daily activities that we might do. Also mindfulness of anatomical parts, a bit like when we're doing a body scan and people ask us to come into the sense of our feet or a sense of our hands. He also talks about mindfulness of the elements in our bodies. And then lastly, mindfulness of a corpse in decay, which we're not going to do today, just in case you're wondering. But interestingly for me, these are more the how. These are how we come into mindfulness of the body. And we'll come back to this. We still haven't fully defined what the body is. And we need to do this because if we place the Satipatthanas Sutta in the context of the Buddha's time of teaching in India, it's likely that people at that time were much more in their bodies, much more embodied than we currently are. This isn't just sentimentality for the past and how things were and how it was so much better then. We're actually trained in our culture at this time to practice thinking and using our minds in many wonderful ways. Concepts, we can hold concepts in our minds now that couldn't have even been thought of 2,500 years ago. And those concepts are ever evolving. So it's just obvious that at school, these kind of concepts and this way of thinking is the training that we get. I've got a really small example of this from my A-level biology lessons. So when I was doing A-level biology in 1990 to 1991, the DNA project had been sort of picked up. The Human Genome Project had been picked up. But it hadn't been mapped out by then. It was just starting. So we did a little bit on DNA, a little bit on what genetics were, but it was very, very basic. But by the time I started teaching in 2003, it had been completed. And suddenly I was having to teach the Human Genome Project to A-level students, having not ever known anything about it. But my mind was trained well enough that I could easily pick up those concepts that had taken 20 years to map out. Suddenly, the 20 years of mapping out by the genetic scientists, suddenly we were teaching to 16-year-olds. That seemed perfectly normal. That's how wonderful our minds are. But the use of the body in this day and age, we're not out farming the land with our bodies. We're not out picking the food with our bodies. We're not out sorting out the waste with our bodies. It just sort of comes and goes in this kind of fairly sterile way. And often in schools, the things that are more bodied ways of learning musical instruments, art, physical education, they're encouraged to be something that's more of a hobby that works alongside the brain work, and it's not really thought of something that you actually want to do with your life. So what do I mean by body awareness? So actually, coming into the body is coming beneath the surface of conceptual thinking. It does include the mind. The mind is not split off from the rest of the body. But in this kind of body awareness, in this mindfulness of the body, we're coming into relationship with the body and not giving quite so much weight to the activity of the mind as we're used to doing culturally. So our body awareness can be of our gut responses, our intuitions that come from the gut, the limbic system, the brain stem system that allows our fight, flight and freeze responses to happen. The heart, all the other organs, the fascias, the connective tissues that are holding all those organs in place and allowing them to move. And all of the cells of the body and all of our emotional responses that are felt in all of them. When we start to go on this adventure into mindfulness that Maitresiddhi mentioned yesterday, we start realizing that the whole body has a deep knowing, a knowing that goes beyond the limit of concepts. It's as if when the Buddha was teaching, the concepts are the finger pointing to the moon and the body becomes the moon itself. So this body that we can explore holds all of our humanness, all of our strengths and our faults and our failings, our aliveness, our limitless potential. It also holds all our traumas, our tensions, our good and bad memories that have been built up over the years that we've been in our life and in other lifetimes, our anxieties and fears, our joys and our loves. So it's this body, below the surface of conceptual thinking, that we can start to explore and release, and we can start to let go into the box of delights. So how do we do this? How do we approach this body work? So just checking in with our bodies again, because I've just given a whole load of concepts. So notice where your mind's gone, notice where my mind's gone. Have I still got connection with the earth? Can I still feel that connection with the vastness of the blue open sky? Can I be confident that this body sitting between the two holds everything, holds that limitless potential? And notice if in that moment, I've gone into my thinking mind, that you were bringing judgmental awareness. It's the clear, non-judgmental, kindly awareness that is the key to mindfulness. So it's that moment of, oh, I've spun out into thoughts about whether I think Hridayagita is right about the mind, whether I think she's right about the body. Can I do this? Can I do that? Come back to the body gently. That is the moment of mindfulness. So I'm going to talk a little bit from my personal experience of what this looks like as a practice over the years. And it can seem like, so it seems to me, like as I was thinking about this, oh, actually my practice is around distraction and delusion and being out of the body. But actually that's when the noticing happens. The noticing happens when I notice I'm not. So first of all, my distractions. These are one area of practice that I keep coming back to the body. So over the years, I've come to know more and more deeply what it is that I do, particularly what my body does, what my mind does to stay out of my body, to not be in the current experience. And they loosely link with craving and aversion. So I've got a whole list of things. First of all, Netflix and other screen time. That seems to be the distraction of choice these days for me. But it could be books as well. So anything that's sort of taking me into another world, somebody else's experience. And it does feel like, to me, that I'm alive in that moment when I'm reading about another world or another experience, or reading about something, or looking at something, or watching something. Most of the stuff I watch on Netflix is people's real life experience. It's kind of stories about people's experience. So it's kind of like I'm more interested in their experience, these fake people, than my own. That's very interesting. I love that. I love that I'm doing that. It might be food. It might be that I'm thinking about or actually getting some kind of food that's taking me out of my body. There's an edge of, oh, this will bring me back into my body because I'll really taste it, I'll really experience this food, but that's not what's going on. It's more the thinking about and wanting and getting it. There might be irritations happening that I don't want to feel, or resistances happening that I don't want to feel. So I'll just ignore those. I'll come back to the ignoring bit in a minute. But noticing I've got irritation, noticing I've got resistance is my path to coming back for mindfulness. And I have a particular tendency to think about the future, particularly long-term future. So the closer I get to being in the current present moment and in my body, the further I think into the future. I've got an example of a particular retreat I was on with Prakasha studying the Heart Sutra, where for me, I had the longest experience in meditation of being in the present moment, and it was just wonderful. It was kind of this opening into the vastness, into connection with everything. I don't know how long it lasted. It might have been 2 minutes or something like that, but for me, it was a really, really long time. And then at some point in that same meditation, I realised I was thinking and planning a school reunion in 2029, which was 40 years after we left school. So, and it was just the most amazing moment of seeing how my being does not want to stay and does not want to be in this present moment. And yet it was so amazing. It was almost like it was too much to hold, too much beauty, too much love, too much openness, too much vastness. And I needed to come back into, I want to say the smelly old fish basket, but then I have to explain a whole sutta about the fish basket, which I'm not going to do. Coming back into my limited experience, which is familiar and makes me feel safe and closed and warm and okay again. So another area of practice that I've discovered over the years has been dissociations. And this can loosely be linked to ignorance or delusion, especially if we think of ignorance as ignoring or wanting to ignore experience. And how this manifests in my being, and you may recognize some of these, is fatigue or extreme tiredness, numbness. So that's not just like limbs falling asleep, it's like a sense of feeling numb or slightly dead, not quite feeling alive. Sometimes if I'm being a bit more mindful, I know that I'm out of my body. I get a sense of being out of my body and often describe it. I can feel where my body, I think, is, and I can feel where this other part of me is, and they're slightly offset from each other. Often when I'm in that state, there'll be tripping over or falling over flat on my face, or some kind of clumsiness, clumsiness cooking, or clumsiness walking around, or clumsiness walking into doorways or walking into tables. And the flavour of my mind in that state can often be vague or resistant. So it can be like a vague fog that I can't see anything through, which again feels quite comfortable, or resistant, so back into that irritation and slight annoyance about everything. So it's kind of like not wanting things to be as they are. So I've got a sense when I'm feeling like that, so either in those dissociations or in those distractions, that rather than seeing my body as a box of delights, the fear that's behind that is that if I was in my body, I'm actually opening up Pandora's box, and who knows what I'm going to be letting loose. It feels much safer not to go there. But it also feels very unpleasant not to go there. I don't feel fully alive. I don't feel fully present. The words I've used, that vagueness, that numbness, that it feels like a semi-death while trying to be alive. So over time, I've learnt to trust and have faith in the process of opening up to the body. I've often come on retreat here at Taraloka or at other retreat centres and been able to open up in a safe and held environment. And it's a gentle opening. My body reveals what's needing to be revealed, what's ready to be revealed, what can be handled and held by me, and handled and held by others on the retreat that I'm with as well. The body opens up what I'm ready for. And that's not saying it's always pleasant. Sometimes on retreat it can feel very strong, very uncomfortable, even difficult at times. And that's especially if we're releasing or opening up to past traumas or held tensions that are really held in the body. See how my body sort of holds like that when I'm stressed? Letting go of that can be quite uncomfortable. But my sense and my trust and my faith is that I'm strong, is that I survived the original trauma or holding or pain that I felt. And if I can open that and release it with kindly awareness, without judgment, and with a big holding space, then being with myself as the releasing and the revealing happens can be a really transformative experience. After the retreat, it may be that there's another sense of closing down again, which can feel again very painful. It's like a big ouch as the holding, as the tension can come back a little. But that's still an important part of the process as well, of coming into the body. It's important we don't leave our wounds, newly explored wounds, open to everyone and everything while they're healing, while we're healing with them, while we're being with them. So then it's necessary to close down a bit. It won't be you won't fully close down again once you've explored something. But something may need to just sort of close up a little bit. So back to the how. This is where the Buddha started us with. How do we develop interest in our body as a vehicle for enlightenment? So some of us may already be engaged in some kind of body meditation work, like yoga, tai chi. But we also may have other interests that bring the whole body in, that may not be seen as a meditation, but they can still be really, they're vital again in this kind of path. So I'll give you some examples. You can think of your own versions. So dance, gardening, playing a musical instrument, being art, creating art, some kind of sport, anything that encourages the body to work as a whole and encourages the body to work as a whole and as part of the whole universe. It's not a necessary consequence that those things are bringing us into the body. You can do sport and be in the body in the moment. It's not necessarily a spiritual practice, but if you can bring sort of mindfulness and awareness to all of those things. Mike City mentioned rock climbing, climbing mountains. You know, that's a whole body experience. And then she said, but she was doing it not with a spiritual aspect to it. Now, possibly going back to rock climbing, it could have that more spiritual aspect, bringing awareness to the whole body as that's happening and the mind. So in the Satipatthanas Sutta, the Buddha talks about postures and activities. So this mindfulness of the body doesn't need any special activities, yoga, tai chi, dance, gardening, musical instruments, art or sport. It's everyday movement, everyday activity. Knowing when we're sitting, how we're sitting. Know when we're standing, how we're standing. Know when we're lying down, how are we lying down. Walking, the transitions between them all. Eating, drinking, urinating, defecating, dressing, talking, remaining silent. And if we can keep coming back to the sense of the body in all of those activities, and the sense of the body connected with the earth, connected with the sky, the breathing body, doing all of those activities, it'll start bringing in our own sense of ethical sensitivity as well. Because what we'll start noticing, what we're doing with our bodies, with our speech and our mind is having an effect in the world. So it's not just all insular, it's not all looking in, it's looking in relation to what's going on with other people, what's going on with the whole world. And of course there are specific meditations. So we've got the mindfulness of breathing. That's the one that classically people feel is a meditation of the body. However, it's not the only one. The thing I find really interesting about the mindfulness of breathing is that we think we're being mindfulness of breathing. But actually there's not a thing called breath, and there's not a thing called body without a breath. So the interest has to be in the full breathing body experience, like that they only work with each other by being with each other and being in relationship with each other. So what does that actually feel like? If your practice of the mindfulness of breathing is breathe in, breathe one, out, count one, breathe in, breathe out, count two, that's the head thinking it through. Mindfulness of the breathing body is experiencing what breathing feels like. So you may be surprised for me to say that Metta Bhavana is also a body meditation, or it can be. It's using the imagination and the heart to encouraging the mind and the heart to engage with each other much more. And again, this is really important as a practice because the Metta Bhavana is bringing those in relation to ourselves and other beings. So it's bringing the whole world, imagining the whole world and feeling our responses to the whole world and everyone in it. So questions you could ask yourself as you're doing the Metta Bhavana are what actually happens in the body when you bring a person to mind. Sometimes we can get caught up with imagining the person and trying to think about what they're doing and how they are and the stories about them. Just drop in the name or some kind of sense of them, maybe the smell or a piece of clothing or something, just pop into mind, drop it again, what happens in the body. There's also other meditations like the senses meditation that we did yesterday with Mitra Siddhi, where we bring in all the different senses and have direct experience of colours, of sounds, of tastes, of touch, of smell, and what the mind is also doing with those. The Buddha in the Satipatthanas Sutta encourages us to explore the flow of elements, the flow of the elements between the universe and our bodies. I'm just going to mention the four of the elements, the four great elements: earth, water, fire and air. And the actual meditation is that they're not fixed, they're not static entities. We don't have earth that stays the same. Our skin is endlessly shedding earth all over the place. We're eating earth all the time, each day. We have to drink water. We have to breathe air moment by moment. They're coming in, being used by the body and being breathed out. And the digestive system creating heat, the sun creating heat on it, the temperature changing all the time. So again, the reflection is in the body. How does that feel? How does it feel to have those elements flowing through? It's not a conceptual, oh, my body's made of earth, my body's made of water, my body has fire, my body has air. That's a good starting point. But what does it actually feel like to experience the flow of those elements through the body? And we can also reflect on the dharmas. So we're going to come on to dharmas later on in the week. So I'm not going to go into that in much detail. But everything that you're being taught or listening to or experiencing during this week, just keep coming back to the question, well, what does that feel like in my body? When Maitri Devi talks about dharmas in that way, what happens to my heart? When Maitri Mati brings in something, what happens? Can I feel anything? Have I dissociated? Have I disappeared off? Have I gone into my stories? Just keep noticing and just keep coming back. So to conclude, meditating with and mindfulness of the body is absolutely vital. As Maitri Siddhi said, these four foundations all merge in together. It's not that this is split off from the rest of it. As I said at the beginning, it's not the starting point that then we're moving on to Vedana, moving on to Chitta, moving on to Dharmas and then towards enlightenment. It's not a straight path like that. They're more like four pillars holding up a roof. So if we're not in our bodies, part of the roof's going to fall down. We're going to be working with our minds a lot over the coming days. So keep coming back to the bodies. New concepts bring us into our minds. That's what we're trained to do. Fantastic. Play around with them with the mind. Play around with them with the body as well. And it's not a coincidence that the Buddha put this one first. It's not a coincidence the Buddha put this one first. The body has the potential to take us all the way to enlightenment. So just keep coming back with this clear, non-judgmental, kindly awareness. The body can become the path of becoming fully alive. It's the path of awakening, the path of love, the path of insight. It's a great vehicle, and it's the only one we've got in this lifetime. So take care of it, open up to it, and feel okay about opening the box of delights. If you can do that, you can explore and experience the vast limitlessness of the universe within.